Hello, my name's Tom Morgan. I write about Skype for business development on my blog, thoughtstuff.co.uk. I've put together this short 4-part video series designed for developers who are just getting started in Skype for business development or are curious about what's possible. There are 4 videos in the series. The first video covered the history of Skype for business, showed some screenshots and listed the different types of development tools. The second video looked at the client SDK using a worked example to illustrate what's possible. In this video, we're going to examine UCWA, the Unified Communications Web API. I need an example company to illustrate what I'm doing here, so I have this sample page. It's got a rather lovely bootstrap template, as you can see. And what I've done is I've replaced part of the contact section. And I'm going to show you what the code does first before we dig into it, because I think then it will make more sense. So I've got this totally kind of vanilla template page here. If I go to the contact section, this is where it looks slightly different. What I've done is I've replaced the contact us section with this online chat feature. Now this is just going to take a few moments to log in. What it's actually doing behind the scenes, I'll just explain what it's doing whilst it does it. It's signing in using UCWA, the web API. It's signing in as a user to the link network, to my link network, and then what it's doing is it's looking at my availability. So the availability of the person signed in on the left there on the screen, you can see the Skype client. So what that means is it's got code in the code I'll show you in a minute, which just says if my status is available, show that online chat is available, and if my status is anything other than available, then say that it's offline. So if I were to change my status here to busy, it's a little bit slower than some of the other SDKs and APIs because it is web-based, but now you can see that it's updated and it's saying chat offline. So let's go back to being available again so that it lights up the chat online div, and I'm just going to put in here and say hello, I need help. Okay, so you can see what it's done. It started a new conversation with me here. So I've got the link pop up here. So I can accept that over here. And I can say, what's the problem? With my bad typing. What's the problem? And you'll see it on the screen. Now what's really interesting, worth pointing out here, is that on the screen here, this is just HTML and JavaScript. Yeah, there's nothing clever about this at all. You don't need, obviously we are on the same machine here, but you know both these applications are on the same machine, but it doesn't need to be like that. This is your user's machine here on the right in this Chrome window. They don't have to have link. This could be, you know, this can work wherever. So now that I've shown you what it does, let's dig into the code and see what it does and how it does it. Now, it's just worth pointing out at this stage that this is really just an example product, example kind of worked solution, just to show you what's possible. There's lots of reasons why this sort of approach wouldn't work in a production environment. For instance, you're signing in as an individual user each time, so that doesn't scale. And you're checking the availability of a single person, which again doesn't really scale in anything other than the smallest companies. But it's a good way of showing you what's possible with UCWA, and then you can build on that and add those extra features in later. Okay, so let's look at some of this code. Now, in the introductory video, I said that one of the things that Microsoft have done to make UCWA much more useful than it might otherwise have been is that they've created a lot of helper libraries in JavaScript. I guess they presume, and probably correctly, that lots of people who want to use UCWA are going to be doing so in JavaScript. So I can show you that. So if you look on the contact page, you can see there's a whole bunch of JavaScript helper files that I'm importing here, just to make things like signing in, caching, or transport. So the way UCWA works is all HTTP request and response. So anything on top of that you need to write. So everything then becomes quite complicated. So it's great that they've provided these helpers because it really helps you kind of jumpstart the process and get on and you know build UCWA applications. So I've split the I've split the JavaScript I've written into two parts. There's the logging in and the subscribing to presence, and then the instant message. And I'm not going to go through it bit by bit, but I'm hoping by looking at it, you can see that it's not as complicated as you think it's going to be. So the first thing that happens in this sign into link is a process that's known in the Skype for Business world as auto discovery. And really what that means is it's taking the name you're logging in as, so it might be tom@thoughtstuff.co.uk. It's taking the thoughtstuff.co.uk bit and it's doing what's called auto discovery, which means it just kind of resolves it and works out which server it needs to present these credentials at. And that it will try a couple of known variants, and it will try HTTPS first and then HTTP if that's allowed, and it'll just kind of run through until it finds the right server and the right kind of setup. And when it does, it will pass it back. So in this JavaScript here, what it's going to do is it's going to pass back this handle auto discovery, and hopefully there's a link in it. If not, something bad happened. But we've got this link, which then means we can set some credentials and start the authentication process. And again, the authentication process is going to call back on a handle login. So this is example code, so there's nothing really in the way of handling errors. I'm kind of assuming that you're going to log straight in and everything's going to work perfectly. And then when you do, the first thing you're going to want to do is subscribe to presence. Because UCWA is like I say, is based on this HTTP request and response, it uses events which use long polling in the background to provide some of this information, and that explains a little bit the slight lag that we saw when running the example. The events helper here is really useful in abstracting a lot of that work. So really all I need to say is I'm interested in contact presence. When you get contact presence or when it's updated, in this case I'm calling the same function each time because I don't really care whether it's the first time or subsequent times that presence was received. And all I'm really doing is I'm looking at a single person's presence, and I am then just going to, this is where you, this variable here is I've previously filled in with my details, so that that's the list of SIP addresses. And obviously you can have multiple SIP addresses in here if you're subscribing to lots of different people, but I've only got one. And then in the callback, again, all I really care about is whether or not people are online. So if they are online, and here all I'm saying is just hide and show the offline-online divs, and that's how that works. That's the only complicated part in the whole process, which really isn't that complicated at all. So when it comes to sending an IM, again, it's not as hard as you think it's going to be. So here is the on click for the send button. Now, when you click the send button, it might be in one of two states. You might already be in a conversation, in which case all you really want to do is send a message on that conversation, or it might be the first time you click the button, in which case you also need to set up the whole conversation and get it going and do all of that. Assuming for a moment that it's the first time and you're doing it with start new conversation, again it comes down to registering for different types of information before you post to say that yes, you want to start some messaging. So here I am calling back for three particular pieces of information, three particular events: handle conversation, handle message, and handle messaging. Now if you listen to the introductory video, you'll know about conversations and then the instant message modality within those conversations, and that's really what I'm subscribing to here. You've got a conversation, which is the outer wrapper. Within that, you've got the messaging modality, which is the actual instant message part of that. And then within that, you've got the actual messages, the to and fro sort of real just bits of text that make up that conversation. So in each of these cases, I'm doing something just slightly different each time. In handle conversation, really the only thing I'm looking at is whether or not the state has changed to disconnected. If it has, I put something in the message on the screen just to say the conversation has ended. So you could actually get rid of that completely. It's just a nicety. In handle messaging, again, I'm only checking the one state, which is whether or not I'm connected. and with that payload that comes back, you get some extra links for sending messaging and stop messaging. And this is a good example of how UCWA works in how all the calls, when they kind of come back, they link off with hyperlinks to functions and other parts. So it makes it quite a nice sort of discoverable platform to use. And the idea is that you can make very dynamic applications with it. So within this payload that comes back, you can see it's very easy for me to stop messaging because I just post back on the stop messaging URL. Likewise, sending a message, I know exactly now for this conversation, now that it's connected, I know exactly where I'm supposed to post my messages. And handling a message here, this is the actual message itself, and all I'm doing is I'm appending it to the div with, I think, oh yeah, okay, these are received messages, right? So, yeah, so you can just really, so it's formatted slightly nicely and slightly differently, so I'm formatting in different colours. That's the only exciting thing that's happening there. And I think that's it. The only other thing is the send message itself. Yeah, which again is just posting it's posting it to that URL that we just had discovered, and at that point, that's when I write out the send with its slightly different CSS class, just so it looks slightly different. And that's really all there is to it. Again, it's not a deep dive, but hopefully, and again, it's not necessarily like a production-ready example. There's things that aren't right with it. There's things you wouldn't want to put live, but hopefully it's been useful to see in a kind of relatively short space of time that you can put together something which gives you a way for your users to interact with you on Skype for Business in a way that works in their web browser, in a way that doesn't require them to have link installed or even any plugins. You can do all this text-based and presence-based stuff you can do purely just with HTML and JavaScript. So I hope you found it useful. If you'd like to look at the code, it's all on GitHub, so you can take it and try it out for yourself and fork it and build projects with it. The address is on the screen now for both the code, and there's a blog post which goes into a bit more detail about how this works as well. And you can find more information about Skype for Business Development on my blog, thoughtstuff.co.uk, or you can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at Tom Morgan, that's TOMORGAN. Thanks for watching.